Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Soccer Coaching Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott.
And I'm your other host, Mark.
In each episode, Mark and I will discuss the key topics that impact on football coaching in the foundation and youth development phases. We will share our thoughts, ideas and experiences, and whenever possible include guests so we can get their insights and opinions too. Thanks for listening and we hope you enjoy this episode. Okay, Mark, how are you doing?
Yeah, very good. How's things?
You're not too bad at all. Busy morning of World Cup rugby and of futsal today for us.
Well, and training. I was at training
as
well.
Under 11s You've been out in the rain?
Yeah. Rain and wind.
I was in the warm.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So rugby, football training, futsal.
Sports day and a podcast to finish off the afternoon with.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we're going to have to be quick, so we push for time on this one, aren't we?
We are indeed, yeah.
But we had a key topic we wanted to cover, right?
Yep.
I think we've spoken about this quite a lot in different episodes as part of other things, but we thought we'd give it some time just to maybe explain how we see this, where we value it, and maybe how we deal with it. Right, so the key topic is that of rotation, especially, I guess, in the foundation and youth development phases, so for the younger players, essentially.
Yeah. And when we say rotation, we mean position rotation?
Well, that's the question, I think, to start with. Go on. For you, what does rotation mean?
I think it means two things. So I think one is positional rotation. So if we think about the under 8s age group, they play five-a-side football. You could have back players, forward players, and a goalkeeper. That's, I guess, the general setup. Just
to elaborate, so we don't call them defenders.
Yeah,
we call them back players. I know it sounds like semantics, but the reason we do that is we believe that when we haven't got the ball, everyone's a defender.
Yep.
We've got the ball, everyone's an attacker. So we kind of just change the terminology. So we have goalkeeper, back and front players. Yeah, sorry, Mark, just to make it clear.
Yep, spot on. Yeah. So it means that you rotate your players around all the positions, be it a back, a forward, or a goalkeeper.
And left and right.
And left and right, exactly, and left and right. And they get to experience playing all these different positions. So sometimes you'll be playing with the game in front of you if you're at the back, and if you're a forward, you're kind of, sometimes you have your back to goal. I guess less so at under 8s, but you still have it from time to time. And then obviously if you're a goalkeeper, that's a completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Which I think we can probably talk about.
You've got your back to goal, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble, yeah. You're facing the wrong way. Yeah, exactly.
Which just happened.
Yes. But I think so that's the first part for me, is positional rotation. I think the second thing for me is equal game time. And I think that, I know it maybe doesn't quite fit into the rotational piece, but I think it's an important part of rotating positions and long-term development, is that you give equal game time to all of your players, regardless of their ability. So you may have a boy who's the best player in the team, right? The star of the team, but he doesn't get more game time than someone who may be on the other end of the spectrum, is not as strong, not as confident. However, if they're both working as hard as each other, then they have equal game time.
Yeah.
That's my kind of thought process for rotation.
Yep, okay, I totally agree. So I think if you're looking or talking about the foundation phase, I guess the theory of rotation is the fact you're giving the players an opportunity to practice different positions at different times, essentially. Okay. Yep. And there's different ways in which you can approach that, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we can look at maybe why we think it's important, and we can look at different ways in which you can go about doing rotation, because there's not one way of doing it, there's different ways, right?
Yeah.
Well, why do you think rotation is important in? Why bother doing this? I would say for us, probably being relatively generous, but I would say it's probably half the teams we play against seem to have a relatively fair rotation system like we do, and half don't.
Yeah.
By that I mean there'll be teams that have a goalkeeper who will play in goal the whole game.
Yes. There'll
be players that will play probably in their stronger positions for most, if not all, the game. And there'll be stronger players that will play more of the game than maybe other players. That's what my perception has been from watching some of the teams we played against. I'd say half and half. There's other teams which you can see they're different keepers every quarter.
Yeah.
You can see it's pretty equal in playing time. The stronger players not been on the whole game kind of thing. So you can see that. Now, just to be clear, this isn't me judging. I'm honestly not judging it. I'm not saying one approach is necessarily the right one and one's the wrong one, but that's what we see. Philosophically, our approach is more along the rotation and to give the equal playing time in different positions. And I guess the reason is, why would we do that?
Yeah.
Or not the reason, what's the rationale for doing that?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually think there may be three examples of teams that we play. I think one is a team that's like us. Everyone plays all different positions, including goalkeeper. I think secondly, you play teams who have a permanent goalkeeper, and actually half the time they seem the goalkeeper's very good with their hands and their positioning in goal, less so with their feet, but that's a different matter. But then the players on the pitch rotate around. And then the third is where they've got a fixed goalkeeper and everyone generally has got fixed positions.
So I think their strengths.
Playing to their strengths, yeah. So I think you see a mixture there. And I think almost the middle one with a goalkeeper, a fixed goalkeeper and mixed and rotating positions is like a hybrid, I think, between what we have and then what some of the teams we played where they play to their strengths and it's winning at all costs kind of approach.
Yeah.
And actually, I think we should talk about that second option where we have a fixed goalkeeper and rotating positions maybe a bit later, because I think there are perhaps some benefits to that. We don't necessarily agree with it, but I think there are some kind of benefits to that. But I think the key thing for me is that you're giving the players in the foundation phase, you don't know where they're going to end up playing, right? You don't know whether they're going to end up being a defender when they become an adult. You don't know whether they'll be an attacker. You don't know whether they'll end up being even a goalkeeper. You don't know where they're going to play at this age. So I think you're giving them the experience of playing all different positions, which can only benefit their longer term development. And I think secondly, you're giving them an opportunity to have fun as well, right? If you just had one player who plays at the back all the time, or a defender, doesn't get a chance to score, have shots, doesn't go up for corners, doesn't get a chance to score goals, where's the fun for them, right? And all their friends are kind of scoring goals. Where's the fun for them? I think that's the key thing. And ultimately, we're trying to develop players, we're trying to develop people and players at football, but also we want them to have fun because we want them to come back each week wanting to play football, and we want them to be playing football when they become adults. What's your thoughts? Is that anything I've kind of missed in terms of the benefits of rotating?
Definitely the key points, 100%. I do think there's some other aspects.
Yeah.
I think psychologically it's good for the players to have different pressures, different situations.
Yeah.
So however much results don't matter to the coaches, or shouldn't matter to the coaches one bit. I'm talking about under-8s football here as an example, and or anything really in the youth development or foundation phase, results shouldn't matter to the coaches. They do to the players usually in the moment, which is absolutely fine. I've got no issue with that. So if players want to win in the moment, they shouldn't care too much 30 seconds after the whistle's gone. But in the moment they do, and that's absolutely fine. We would certainly nurture that competitive desire and want to compete. Football's an invasion game and it's competitive. Even non-competitive football is competitive. So, but I think you need the psychological pressure, and actually there comes a pressure playing in goalkeeper or at back. Because mistakes tend to get punished with goals to the other team, and watching the players deal with that when they're 7, 8, 9 years old is a good thing. It's a good lesson for them. Where if they just play up front and they can miss a few shots and grab a few goals, and the mistakes aren't really punished in any way there, I just think you miss out on that challenge. I also think that, and I mean, it's crazy how many times I hear this. You hear players and you hear dads telling you that their kid's a natural goalkeeper, a natural defender, a natural goal scorer, a natural winger, a natural midfielder, when they're 7 years old. Yeah. Now, let's for say argument say that they're right and they've got this because when they've got it right. If they are a natural defender, surely it's a massive benefit to them if they know how an attacker plays, thinks, feels, moves the ball and stuff. So if they get an opportunity to play in that position a few times or lots of times when they're 7, 8, 9 years old, if at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, their position is a defensive position, they'll be better for that experience of knowing how an attacker thinks and feels. The same way as if you're a goalkeeper, I think the best place for a natural goalkeeper to play is up front because you can then think like an attacker. Yeah. I just don't see that it doesn't have benefits, even if you're going to take the mindset that, I know where my kid's going to play, or I know where the player or coach is going to play when they become an adult.
Yeah.
But the reality is, and you've only got to look at the professional game, and I don't think it's right to make too many comparisons between youth development football and foundation football with the professional game. But if there's one you want to make, how many players are there that played in different positions through their younger stages of their football compared to where they play professionally now? It's not a minority. There's loads. Yeah. Because actually, until they go through puberty and you know how tall they're going to be, how quick they're going to be, how physically big they're going to be, how they use their body and stuff like that, you've got no idea how they're going to play.
Yeah.
You really haven't. And I'm quite passionate about this. I'm going to try and rein myself back a little bit. I'll save my rant for later. But it does seem ludicrous that we think as coaches, with whatever badge we may or may not have, suddenly we've got a crystal ball to these kids' futures about how they're going to grow physically. Because that will probably be the biggest determinant to what they end up playing. So back to your point about the goalkeeper thing, I'm going to get on one straight away now, but the most extreme example here is, you're telling me, and I've seen this, you put a kid in goal from under sevens, who plays in goal maybe 70, 80, 90, sometimes 100% of their football time, their match playing time is in goal from under sevens on. And that kid doesn't grow to be over 6 foot tall. Okay, let's say he goes to be 5'10" maybe, which is still an average height, I guess, maybe slightly below average in these days. But they're unlikely to play top flight football. Now they may have had cracking feet and could have been a great outfield player, but you will never know because we put them in goal. Why? Because it suited us to try and win games. And I'll hear the argument being, oh no, but little Tommy loves playing in goal. He's a natural goalkeeper. He only wants to play in goal. Yep. Well, my kid only wants to eat chocolate and pizza and fajitas, but I don't let them do that because I know it's not good for them. So I throw a carrot every now and then in the plate. Do you know what I mean? And some other things because I know what's right for the kid. Yep. And as the grown adult in the room here, even if the parents don't get it and the players might not get it, we have an obligation to do what's right for their long-term development. And the goalkeeper one could be a bit of an extreme example, but I've seen it done with defensive players and I've seen it done with forward players as well. And I've only ever seen it be detrimental to those players' development over the longer term. I'm talking maybe 2, 3, 4 seasons. Yeah. Literally, the players that get pigeonholed into one position end up being the least impactful players in that team as that team evolves. Yeah. The one place I'd give you a bit of leeway on is when players play a lot in midfield. Yeah. And the reason that happens is because they're playing everywhere in midfield. They're playing defensive attack in that one position, so they get a chance to practice everything. I've gone off on one there a little bit, but I've gone into the way you shouldn't do it rather than the way you should do it. But it does my head in, and I just think, you know what, we have an obligation, and however much we might want to win these games, as ridiculous as that may be for an under-8s team, I just think if you're doing it at the expense of rotating your players around, then you know what? I kind of feel like I've already won against you, or my players have already.
Even if you don't win the game.
Even if you don't win the game, 100%, because I've got no issues with going out. If I go out there and don't rotate my players around, I'll be honest with you, I better win that game. Otherwise, what is the point? And now I don't want to do that because I don't believe in the result, but you better win that game because you're just literally, there's no other point in playing that game. I don't get it what you're doing for development-wise. Now, what you could say as an argument is, well, we'll play fixed positions week by week by week. So I might only see these teams, and actually the next week we play them, they may well rotate around. And that would be a fair argument back, and I would stand corrected. I don't get the impression from the teams I've played against that is the way things are. Certainly with the goalkeeper, because actually these goalkeepers are very, very good, they are good that we've seen. Yeah. And credit to them. But I don't believe that is the common practice. I think it seems to be more that teams either do rotate around, either because they have to, because they haven't got a keeper, or they're just still finding their feet in where positions, the teams are the strongest positions, or they have an approach like we do where we think it's in the player's best interest. But you're right about mentioning fun as the main reason, because it's more fun to try different challenges. But I also think psychologically it puts the boys in different places on the pitch. Physically it challenges them. Physical literacy skills are completely different to playing offensively as playing defensively or in goal. Game understanding. Positional awareness, playing as a right-sided forward player on the left-hand side as attack, or playing as a left-sided player on the right-hand side is completely different to how you might play the game. Even at under 6s, under 7s, it is the way you move the ball and where you cut, where the space is. Playing at the back is much more challenging playing on your weaker side. If you're a defensive player in the back, it's a great challenge for players to have to play out from trouble, cutting back towards your goal on your stronger side. Maybe there's just so many more benefits to having a better feel for the game if you rotate round, and that's what the foundation phase is for.
Yeah, well, I think you've ticked every box on the 4-corner model there: psychological, social, physical, and the tactical, technical.
Did I do that? And
you covered all of them.
I'm not preaching for the FA's approach. I just think this does fit in with that. I guess if there's one thing that's going to marry up with the 4-corner model from the FA, it's going to be rotation.
I think the other thing, and just coming back to the point on the goalkeeper, having a permanent goalkeeper, and again, I don't want to necessarily compare under foundation phase football with adult football or the Premier League, but you look in the Premier League, these goalkeepers can play football. Right, the goalkeepers nowadays can play football. It's not like the old days where they're just there to catch the ball and kick the ball and save the ball, and they're there to be an extra defender or an extra player on the pitch almost. So I think if you've only got a goal, if you're only playing this boy or girl in goal, I think that you're almost hindering them a little bit for their longer term future anyway, because you're not allowing them to be playing with their feet enough. And maybe you use the goalkeeper and in the way you play, that's fine. But I still don't think they're getting enough of the ball, because it's certainly, if you're playing this goalkeeper permanently in goal in matches, it's almost certainly in training they're in goal in training, and maybe they're on their own training with another coach at catching the ball and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that football's changed so much that I think that longer term these players need to be playing different positions. And the other thing is that you think of some of the best defenders in the world now. They play football, right? You look at Robertson at Liverpool. You look at Trent Arnold at Liverpool, the right back. They play football. They're attacking players. They're defenders, but they're attacking players like Kyle Walker. And I think that, again, if you're just playing someone at the back and you just say, right, all you're here to do is just defend that box, that line in the foundation phase, then you're not doing them justice, and you're not going to help them develop in the future. And I'm not saying that all the boys are going to get to play in the Premier League by any stretch of the imagination.
But it's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter how far they go to. It's the fact that they go to play football, right?
Exactly.
And I wonder how many of those players, even the ones you mentioned there, and I don't know those two particularly, although I've got a feeling that with Trent Alexander-Arnold, I've got a feeling he may have been more of an offensive player when he was developing and working in the academy. I could be wrong, but certainly Ashley Cole was. Ashley Cole was a left winger, do you know what I mean? And drop back. So I think there's no coincidence that some of these really cracking defenders that are good on the ball probably spent a lot more time playing more offensively in their youth development time to get them good on the ball. And if as grassroots foundation phase coaches, we don't recognise that, and we just play our players to their strengths, and those defensive players just play at the back and are basically just blockers and stoppers and just clearers, they're never going to get an opportunity to play that. So the game's going to go past them. And that's the game now, let alone the future game, which I think you're talking about, and how things have changed. And I'm not sure. There probably is some wonderful English goalkeepers out there that are brilliant at goalkeeping, shot stopping, catching corners, communicating, making good decisions, and playing with their feet. But I haven't seen that many. I haven't seen. I don't know who's coming through it, and it does seem to be there's a premium value on those keepers that are more the foreign keepers that have come from probably more Latino countries that actually play a lot of Fanino, futsal, football, small-sided game stuff that are really good with their feet as well. And we've got an obligation. You might have we've played against the lad who was a cracking goalkeeper recently against one of the things. He was excellent. Yeah. To be fair, even his distribution was really, really good. Yeah. But you think, what's the game going to look like if he grows up to be 6'6" tall and keeps his ability to play in goal? And I'm not a scout, I've got no idea, but he could potentially be a cracking goalkeeper, maybe at the highest level. Yeah. But we don't know what the game's going to look like in 10 years' time, do we? Yeah. So he's 7 now. So in 10 or even maybe in 20 years' time, because he'll still be playing when he's 27 years old if he's a goalkeeper for sure. Maybe we just get into his prime at that age. What's the game look in 20 years' time? Surely part of that's going to involve, having the ball at his feet, because it does more now than it did 5 years ago and 10 years ago, and you can't really see it going backwards. It's only going to probably be more so. And we have an obligation to try and prepare them the best we can. Yeah. So the question is, why don't people, why are people choosing to take a player at 8 years old and play them in one position for the majority of their time? Mark?
I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest. No. It's strange. It is strange to us, because I think that's the way we think about it, and it makes sense to us. I think it's more work, and I think that could be one of the reasons. I think it's more work when you're rotating positions. You have to think about, like, you go with a plan right before the game. I know that this boy has played in goal last week. He doesn't need to play in goal this week, so I need to think about positioning where he can play.
But I think you have to plan. I think coaches do.
I don't know. I don't see many coaches with a plan as detailed as you, to be honest. Not sure it's good or bad, but anyway, I don't see.
Doesn't always plan out, right?
Yeah. But I was the same. I had a plan, and I think it's more work. That's one thing I would say. I think also it's the fact that a lot of coaches are result-orientated coaches, winning at all costs, or maybe not even quite winning at all costs, but they want the players to go out there and they want it to be a close game. That there's maybe pressure from the parents because they haven't set the expectations out from the beginning of how they're going to play.
Do you think the reality is coaches feel more obliged to play players to their strengths?
Maybe.
Is that it? And I'm trying to be fair in my judgment. And I'm sure we've got listeners out there that will probably do some of this stuff. And I want to be fair. I don't think we often go on a particular... We try and be balanced in our comments on the podcast, and we try not to wind people up by having too much opinions and keep just to ourselves as much as we can. But this is one where I'm going to sail a bit closer to the wind, I think. And I want to be fair, though. And I'm not even saying that... I categorically think it's wrong to play players in fixed positions when they're 8 years old. I do, week in, week out. Yeah. I understand in certain games, actually, it might be the right... You want to stay competitive in your match. And I think that's fair enough. And I think, actually, if you're playing against a real tough team this week and you're going a bit more tried and tested, I think that's okay. And I'm not knocking that. I'm honestly not.
As long as you keep to equal game time, by the way, I still think that should be a given. As long as every player is working
the
hard,
effort's there.
The effort's there, then I think that's a given.
But I just don't believe that happens. I do believe there are quite a few coaches out there that will just play to players' strengths, and whether or not that's because they think they're doing the right thing, or is that the right thing, and actually encouraging the players to take on different challenges in games is the wrong thing. Is that is that why this is a problem and we see it different, and are we wrong then?
Well, I was listening to another podcast recently, and there are some other good podcasts out there, by the way.
Really?
Yes. And it was talking about coaches, and as a coach, do you want to develop your strengths even more to make them better?
Yeah.
Or do you want to make your...
As a coach?
Yeah. Or do you want to make your areas of development better? So they'll probably never get to your strengths.
Yeah.
But you're going to get them a little bit higher. Or do you want to work on your strengths where you know you're really good and actually get that even better? And it was a long debate around that, actually. And there were a couple of them had the two people on the podcast had quite different views on it. But again, it comes back down to actually when you're coaching players. So if you've got a boy that's very good, very attack-minded, can go around players very easily, one-on-ones, very strong, the kind of combat one-on-one he's very good at, do you want to kind of keep working on that, developing that, nurturing that, by putting him in a position where he's going to get that as a forward player? I think you can do it as a back player, so it's not a great example, but as a forward player, do you want to do that? Or actually, do you want, and maybe they're not as good defense tackling or defending one-on-ones or something like that, or do you want to nurture that area to kind of get that a little bit better?
So is it a question then? That's a good comparison, and it's funny how many times the players and the coaches kind of development is similar, isn't it? What I would say here is most coaches are probably grown-ups and adults, so we're at a different stage of our careers, and if you want to call it that, where... And I think for players, there's a good point there. And I remember reading a podcast a couple of years ago, and it was talking about actually players, more senior players, just play to their strengths, train their strengths. You know, I'm not saying that's necessarily right. I've not worked with elite adults, but I could see the argument for that, saying, look, they're at an age now, just get them doing their strengths really well. The weaknesses, we'll manage those, but for honing on the strengths. But I think in the foundation phase and the younger phases, I don't think we really know what the strengths and weaknesses are going to be until they've at least gone through puberty. So you don't necessarily know. And just because a kid right now is pretty quick or got some ability or can defend well, that's now. Things can change. They can slow down, they can get faster, they can get bigger, stronger. And that will affect how they kick a ball, receive a ball. They could practice some different things. So I get it. I just think, and I'm not saying ignore their strengths. To be fair, what we try and do with our little team is we try and make sure they play. The ideal situation is they've got 10 minutes in goal. They'll get 10 minutes playing a position which is probably their strongest position, 10 minutes playing one where they don't play. So they'll get 30 minutes a game. Obviously, we've got 4 goalkeepers, so if they're not going in goal that week, they'll get at least 25 minutes a game. And usually it's 15 minutes in the strong position and 10 minutes in a different position. That's kind of how it works out. And we do that every single game. And that's almost guaranteed. I don't think I've deviated away from that hardly ever at all, to be honest. That's kind of what happens. And I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, because there's different ways in which you can rotate your players around. And what I like about this is I like doing it because I think the boys are intelligent football players. So I think in a game, they've got a challenge. I just played right back there now for the 10 minutes. Now I'm playing left forward. So they've got to deal with that in that game against the same opposition. Because what I could say is, right, this week you're right back. Next week you're left forward. Next week you're goalkeeper. And that's another way in which you could do rotation. I'm not saying you've got to look at the players that you've got. I quite like doing it in the game because I think it challenges them more personally. I also think the way we set the team up, we spoke before in the 2-2 formation, is that they don't, even if you're right back, you can find yourself in the left wing position quite easily. Certainly the right forward or midfield position. So the game does it for you a little bit anyway, and we encourage our keepers to play with the ball at their feet. So again, even if they're the goalkeeper and they made a save, as soon as they drop the ball, they're almost like a back player, right? Playing out from the back, literally playing out from the back with the ball at their feet. And I'm not saying this is the best way of doing it, but for me, it just seems like, okay, there's lots of challenge there, lots of opportunity. You've got to use your left foot, your right foot. I mean, we played a game the other day, and I think out of the goals we scored, half of them came from the boys' non-preferred foot, because they were playing a different side that they had to shoot from that way. But that's come from them having the confidence to use their other foot, and also being in a position where they've had to use it because they're not always on the side of the pitch they want to be on necessarily to create those chances. And we're using those opportunities. I just can't understand why coaches wouldn't. And if it's a case of, okay, well, our players aren't good enough to rotate around, and I mean that with all respect, little Billy, he just isn't. He's got no impact up front. Well, then I would argue he possibly is in the wrong team or playing at the wrong level. And I don't want little Billy to be thrown out of the club. I'm not saying that. But if you've got a tiered system in which you've got an A, B, or a C team, then maybe he needs to go from the A to the B or the B to the C. He's better off being in a team where he can play at least 2 different positions every game and learn for those, in my opinion, and develop his ability out of that, and just having one position every week for one team, which he probably won't then develop as fully rounded as he potentially could do.
Very good point. And I think that I think one thing you should do actually is your plan is share it on the on Twitter. Maybe you could change the boys' names, but I think people may be interested to see how you can lay it out and how they play different positions. And I think it might give some of the coaches a bit of food for thought on how to do it. But I think you're right. I think that maybe 5-a-side that is quite a straightforward. It's not straightforward, but it's easier at 5-a-side because you've got, as you said, back, forward, left, right.
That's the idea of playing 5-a-side, right? That's exactly. The idea what they said, play 5-a-side, because don't complicate 100%. It, but you can still get some good principles in there around the basic formation, some principles of play, enough football. And if you do pigeon, I mean, sorry, Mark, I've cut you off here, but you are. I'll let you finish. But you're right. But the thing with 5-a-side, the idea being that actually, if you have got coaches that are a bit fixed in the way they want to position the players, then really, if you play 5-a-side properly, it doesn't matter, because even if you're the back player or the goalkeeper, if you're playing properly, you're going to play different positions anyway. You're going to get out and do different things. But we know it doesn't happen.
If you're a back player, you're staying on that circle,
I've seen and heard coaches say you stand on the white line, the edge of the area. You do not go past the halfway line. I've seen players literally like running into a wall to stop crossing the halfway line. Either forward players coming back or back players going forward. I mean, literally. So you're right. That's why if you're not going to allow the 5-a-side game to take its natural format for that age group with some structure, I don't believe in complete chaos, just play anyway. I don't think that will help us necessarily either. But if you're going to over structure it with kind of rules for the players, then you've got to rotate even more, because if you're just a back player in that team that you've got to stand on the white line at the edge of the area and can't go past the halfway line, oh my God, you're going to play football when you're 13 years old? No way, give me something else to do. Sorry.
I agree 100%. I think that when you get to 7-a-side, the rotation, you still do it, and you should still do it. I think it gets a little bit harder because there's more positions as well, right? Maybe you start to cluster positions to say, actually, in the next couple of weeks, little Johnny's going to play left defender or left back player, and then left midfield player, and then maybe he'll play centre midfield player and our attacker, depending on the formation you've got, obviously. But I think then you have to start to. It gets a bit more challenging in terms of playing all positions in the game. So maybe you start clustering how you do it. So and then
we've got 3 positions at the moment. Really, got goalkeeper back and front. You've got left and right, but you're right. So the 7-a-side, you could probably have at least 4, if depending how you do your formations. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I get that.
And I think the other thing, obviously, 9 versus 9, it gets a bit more challenging because it becomes more of a tactical game and things like that. But I think by that point. And this is still 9v9 in the foundation phase. I think we should probably just touch on the youth development phase and when it becomes competitive football. And I've done in commas there competitive football.
I took a deep sigh. Competitive football. Okay.
So I think it gets harder then. But if you've done everything right in the lead up to that point, so if you've been rotating at 5-a-side, at 7-a-side, at 9-a-side, you've got a bunch of players, for want of a better phrase, that can play these different positions, right? That can play, that are comfortable on the ball on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. And you're going to have some players that, and you've got it now in the team, that can very easily play left and right. In fact, it doesn't matter where you play them. They play equally as strong on the left and equal on the right because they're two-footed. And you've got players that are very one-sided, and they're mostly left-footed players. And I was a left-footed player, always playing on the left. I think left-footed players are very left-sided, apart from Messi.
You said that a few times, but he's very left-footed, isn't he?
He is very left-footed, but
he's good enough with it.
But he plays either side, right? Yeah, he can play anywhere. Much more cultured left-footed players, by the way. So yeah. By the way, just the other point I wanted to make, I made a note of this right at the beginning of the conversation. I'm going to get back to it. Is the beauty of 3v3 in the foundation phase, and one of the reasons I think that younger age groups, under 7s, under 8, should be doing 3v3 is because you don't. They attack. There's so much transition: attack, defend. You don't have goalkeepers. You have little goals, and I think that's just the beauty of 3v3. There's a lot of people out there that talk about how great 3v3 is. For me, the great thing about 3v3 is that you just attack and defending. You're not worrying about a goalkeeper. There's no. It doesn't look like proper football, so people don't keep scores, don't get so excited about it. There's so many goals that parents lose count, and that's the great thing of 3v3 for me is at this age group.
And I don't just think the foundation phase, Mark. Honestly, I think you can play with any age group. It's football. And if you want to see how good your players are, put them on a 20x12 with 2 small bazooka goals either end and play 3v3.
Yeah.
So who's 100%. Working hard, who's good in the ball, who can defend and attack. There's no hiding in that situation.
Yeah.
And that shows a good indication where the players are. And you are right. I do think it's best for footballing without goalkeepers. I think it works really well. But I tell you what, 3v3 with goalkeepers is great as well. Small pitch, then you've got the keepers involved. They can drop and play a little bit as well, and they can make the saves and they can then drop the ball and then they can play the balls out wide. Small-sided games, it really, really helps.
Is that what we used to call rush goalkeeper or fly goalkeeper?
I mean, it was in the old days, wasn't it? Back in the 80s. It's coming back. You see, everything comes back eventually, doesn't it?
It does.
But you're right. But a couple of things there. Then we'll talk about training in a minute. Then and how this can feed back into training.
Yep.
But before we do, refining positions. So you're right. This whole thing about rotation. I'm not saying you should rotate players forever.
Yeah.
And I also recognise the fact that I think where we're different to academies, we are trying to develop a team.
Yeah.
Rather than individual players. I think we've got an obligation to try and do a bit of both as a grassroots football coach. But I do think we're under a bit more obligation to think about the team as much as we are about the individual players. Where I think academy, and rightly so, they just be good individually and we'll work on that.
Yep.
So you've got a bit of that to balance off. So I get this. But you've got an obligation to try and give players different opportunities and different positions on the pitch.
Yeah.
So I think, but you can refine players, and the idea of having the stages and moving the format slightly bigger over a couple of years is the fact you do refine a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you've got a naturally defensive player, then don't just play him as centre back. Play him centre back, left wing back, central defensive midfield player maybe, and then the odd game in, go on your game up front. You could do different things.
Yeah.
Like he hasn't got one position still, even if you're going to 9-a-side or even 11-a-side. And bear in mind that the 9-a-side transition I think happens at under 12,
under 11s.
Under 11s is 9-a-side.
Yeah.
So they're still only 10 years old.
Yeah.
It's too early to pigeonhole players. The important thing is they've not gone through puberty yet. Now, I'm not a scientist or biologist, but I pretty much know that changes things for kids. And until they've gone through that process, you've got no idea how big a player's going to be. Who's the Man United defender, the young lad that's he's 6'4" now, McTominay?
Yeah, he's a centre midfield.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure this is correct. I heard this, but I think they struggled to keep him at the academy. I think for numbers because he was so small for so long, and then he until he was very, very like quite late in his age, like probably late teens, I think. He then shut up and came back after Christmas apparently and was 6'4" suddenly, and then he was fine. So it's the hope for you yet, Mark.
Yeah, I've been waiting for that most of my life, to be honest.
But I'm sure he's not the only one. And I believe, again, Harry Kane, I think, was at Arsenal and got released because physically I didn't think he was quite capable. And then he went away, got bigger, got toned up a little bit. And, geez, look at that situation. Yeah. So, I just think, who are we as grassroots coaches before puberty to make any choices about where these players can and can't play? And even though we can see right now in the moment where their strengths are, I get that.
Yep.
We still have obligation to give them an opportunity to show their strengths, but also challenge them in different areas as well, as much as you can, in game time as well as in training.
I heard another one actually recently. Busquets, Barcelona.
Oh yeah,
used to be a forward for Barcelona B.
Did he really?
Yeah. And I think it was Guardiola that brought him back to be kind of defensive midfielder.
Isn't it funny how most of these players end up going from forward positions backwards rather than back positions? Well, you don't hear too many that actually played at the back and went forward. So what I reckon is those back players either made it and worked hard, or what happened to them? They've gone.
Yeah.
Because those front players have gone back and nicked their places. So where they've gone? They've gone because they can only play at the back.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Get on the ball and get forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I still want to. I think the points you made just before I said about talking about Busquets was spot on. But I still just come back. I think the two real important things is one is the social corner in terms of having fun, in terms of scoring goals, right? You want all your players to score goals and enjoy scoring goals. You remember you were like even in school or even when you go for a kick around like on a Monday night on the Astro with your mates, you score a goal, you feel good about scoring that goal, right? And you want the players, all the boys and girls to have that feeling of scoring goals and really contributing to the team.
Mark, they should be made to have a go at it.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
And I do believe there are some players that aren't as bothered about that as much. That not many. There's certainly a minority, especially in the younger age groups. They will want to play a goal, but there are some that aren't as fussed as others.
Yeah.
But make them get up there, make them have a few shots, and they might get the bug for it. And suddenly they might just ping a couple of shots, and then their attitude changes towards it. And the same way they want to score goals, a lot of those players that want to score the goals don't always want to do the work at the back. Sometimes, well, make them because it's a team game, and it's great for their resilience, their understanding about. I've jumped in again.
That's the other point. Resilience, the psychological corner. That's the resilience, and even going in goal. Right, you concede 2 or 3 goals.
How do you react to that?
How do you deal with it?
One goes for your legs. What are you going to do?
Yeah,
Brilliant
exactly.
learning. Do you know what I mean? And if you create the right environment as a coach, then the players, however disappointing they might be at the moment, will deal with it and they'll learn and get better for it.
And it also makes the players realise that it's not the goalkeeper's fault.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because they're going to be in that position as well.
Yep. So they
all
know the keeper's fault. Yep.
Exactly.
Well, I wonder, like, I'd like to take like an under 10s or 11s team and then look at the players and say, okay, you've had these kids for maybe 5 or 6 years. How many of those players, how many corners have they taken over the last 4 or 5 years? How many penalties? How many free kicks?
Yeah.
You know, how many times have they been your captain?
Yeah.
How many times led a session? You've got to share this thing out, haven't you? You've got to say, okay, all these things are important. And if you just pigeonhole players, there'll be some players there that might not have even taken a corner ever.
Yeah.
Possibly, or certainly not for the last 3 years. Not taking a free kick. Not like what's going on there.
Yeah.
You know, how does that happen? Like they've not had the pleasure of just taking a corner or a set piece or something, or having a short corner or something. You've got an obligation to give these kids that exposure, haven't you? Just involved, to get them involved. Exactly.
Totally agree.
Because if you don't do it, then what you're saying to me, actually, you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe I can. Give me the opportunity to practice. Maybe I can't do it yet, but if I get more chances, I'll get a bit better at it. And if I see the players who are good at it, well, then I've got something to work towards and aspire towards and work hard in the garden or at home or something else about trying to get there. But
totally agree.
It's just a missed opportunity otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. And it also comes back to the fact that you're coaching that person. You're trying to help them develop from a football standpoint, but you also want to develop them from a personal standpoint, right? And all of these different things from your social side to your psychological side. And the physical side, because if you're just playing at the back all the time, then you're going to have different physical movements from someone who's playing in midfield, who's twisting, turning, running forward, running back. You're going to have different movements, right? So definitely. I think you're as a coach, you're there to help the players both from a personal standpoint become better people and make them ready for future, but also make them. Obviously help them develop football.
Maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe it's the fact that actually it's about the future, not about the today. So, and again, from the coaches, and I'm not having dig at coaches here, but I wonder if there are too many that think about the result as the priority for today rather than actually what the players can do maybe in 6, 12, 18 months or 2 years' time.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely believe that you'll have a better team of players, more well-rounded, more capable, more resilient, more competitive, more understanding, more team-oriented, if they've done different things for a period of time, and you'll get the benefits of it, but you may lose a few games and concede a few goals in the short term. Yeah. I go with the plan. I always, because we rotate every quarter, I assume we're going to go down every quarter. I assume we're 1-0 down, which is fine. I don't mind that, you know. Yeah. If we're 2-0 down, it's because they're even better than I thought. And if we score, because we've got to score 2 goals every quarter basically to get ourselves ahead of the game, and that's fine. That's what it's about. Because I don't mind, and also I know there'll be mistakes made because we're trying to do different things each time. You know, it's totally the way it is.
And I think you want. I think it also does come back as well. I think you want the players to be competitive in matches, and I don't think there's an excuse for not rotating players and not giving equal game time at all. But I think there are probably some times where actually, I think you kind of said it, you want to be a bit more tried and tested.
And maybe it's a good game, haven't you?
And maybe you change in terms of how you rotate. You just rotate forward and back and goalkeeper. Yeah. You don't rotate left and right. Yeah. Because you or for that particular week. Yeah. But you still have your philosophy is equal game time, rotation positions, rotation of sides. Yeah. But for a particular week where it's not going to necessarily work.
Yeah, and likewise, if you're doing well in the game and you can rotate some more, well, then get the keeper out now then. Yeah. Let's do things more. Let's try them even further. You know, let's try different things. Maybe get them to pick a formation they want to play or do different things. Yeah, totally. Mark, I know we're pushed for time. Just 2 quick things. Is that okay?
Yeah.
First of all, just the importance of, I think, training here. Yeah. You know, now, I do think it's important as well in training to get all the players involved, including the goalkeepers. If you've got a fixed goalkeeper for your matches, who am I to argue with you? But please get them involved in training. Would be my beg to everybody. Get them on because you might see something you might not have seen before. So get them playing with their feet and playing some football. Also, you can use training to rotate positions around and get boys doing different things. So especially if you're doing small-sided games, but even not rotate around there, because again, you might be surprised what you see. But what I would say is, and this is what I think can be a bit unfair, is if you are going to rotate players, you've not done it much previously, you can't expect a player to suddenly go and play a different position as good as the player that's played in that week in, week out is. And start being critical of that player and say, well, I told you they couldn't play there. Or, there's no chance that little Tommy can be a centre up front because look at him. It's like, well, give him a chance first. And not just 10 minutes in one game. He's going to have to practice a lot and get there because he might have the chances the other players have had to play that position lots of times. Yeah. So you've got to persevere over the longer term with it. And what I would ask is another begging thing to especially in England when we go to this competitive football, under 12s, is it?
It's under 12s.
Under 12s. These are still 11-year-old kids. Now, the whole competitive thing is nonsense. It's complete nonsense. All games are competitive. There's no sport that can't. It's inherent in the sport. Okay, we had one of our previous podcasts, didn't we? It's in there. So it's not about competitive and non-competitive. They're all competitive. The question is how much you're going to focus on the result of the game.
Yep.
I don't believe calling it competitive under 12s means that we've got the right as coaches to suddenly forget all about development and just focus on the result. Yep. And that gives us excuses then for not rotating players, for not giving equal playing time, and focusing on the results just because of the FA want to call this competitive under 12s now. Yeah. I think it's a nonsense. I think it's completely wrong. These are still kids learning their game. They haven't gone through puberty at 11s, most of these kids, especially the boys. Yeah. You just got to think. Don't use it as an excuse to make bad decisions about the players' long-term development. You've still got 3, 4, 5 years left of these kids learning their football properly and getting there. And who knows where it's going to lead to once they've gone through all the things they need to go through to get what they need to go to. And there's a reason that most kids drop out of football under 13s. I think that's part of the problem. I think suddenly it gives a lot of confidence. Even the best intended coaches, I think, when that competitive thing kicks in, and it must be so hard when you're playing against other teams that have this kind of win at all cost approach because they're allowed to now in inverted commas because they've got this competitive word associated to it. I beg coaches out there to see past the nonsense and do the right things by the players. You may refine slightly. I totally understand that. I'm not saying play one everywhere, but just think about what's going to be the benefit for these players over the next 3 or 4 years, not the next 3 or 4 games. And if you can tell me that not rotating around in some way, shape or form is more beneficial, please let me know because I need to hear that argument because I haven't heard it yet. If you can tell me that not equal playing time is more beneficial, then please let me know. If you can take 11-year-old kids to a game and only playing for 15 minutes, please let me know what's right about that because I don't get it. I'm happy to listen and I'll have my mind changed. I honestly will, but I don't see it. These are still kids. It isn't adult football, even at under 12s, competitive inverted commas.
I totally agree. Right, and I think that's a great closing thought. And look, one thing I would say to that as well is that what changes, you play 9-a-side at under 11s in April, May. You play 9-a-side at the start of the next season in September. So you've got kind of maybe 3, 4, 5 months difference. One goes from what's defined as non-competitive to competitive, which just means that your results are published. There's no other difference apart from your results are published and coaches' mindsets change because they're given license to think it's competitive football.
That's the danger. That's the danger.
But in reality, what actually changes? The boys, most of them are the same age because they've turned 11 already, so they haven't got any older, right?
No,
4 or 5 months, but
for most it's nothing, is it? No, right? It's a small percentage.
And the other thing is, actually, these kids at this age are then going to senior school, so they're taking on a lot more in their life as well, and things are changing for them.
And if they are going for those physical changes, that's mental changes as well. There's a lot going on there. It's got to still be fun. It shouldn't be a license for coaches just to say, right now I've got an excuse to be able to reduce game time for players. And also I think at that point, if you've done the right things for the previous 3 or 4 years, you're going to be fine, but do it now. If you've got an under 6, 7, 8 team, then do it all now because you'll be laughing at that. Don't worry about tomorrow's results. Don't worry about it. It's nonsense. It's an absolute joke. And if you lose to a team because they're playing fixed positions, take it on the chin. Absolutely fine. Keep doing the right thing by the players, by the team and the players for the longer term. Tell the parents what you're doing and the reasons behind it. Stick to your principles. Make sure you've got players that can impact in at least different positions on the pitch. And if they can't, then they're in the wrong team. I'm sorry. Then if you've got another team, that's where they go. So if they're not in, work with them, persevere, keep giving the confidence. You'll be much better for it. The players have more better experience, and you won't be scratching around trying to find players at under 14s because you've lost them all because they're bored and had enough of playing football.
Exactly. 100%.
Jesus was the most ranty one I've ever done. They're getting worse, my little rants, aren't they? All right, thanks, Mark. Well, I know we're pushed for time, but I hope that was useful. Please, guys, a bit more controversial, maybe. I don't know. If you think it is, please let us know. We are willing to be corrected on this stuff if we've got it wrong. If you have a different approach, please do share with us. You can reach us on Twitter at SoccerCoachCast. Email us info@thesoccercoachingpodcast.com. And we'll hopefully get another one out in a week or so.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Have a good week, Mark. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.